Hi guys, welcome back to the Earthly Delights podcast. We've had a bit of a hiatus after the coronavirus episode, and one of the podcasts that we were going to record when we were planning to go to London was with my good old friend Leah Palin, and we're going to talk about anxiety today, which is something that I'm interested in as I haven't really had any kind of first-hand experience with it. So, but before we get on with any of that, it's obviously we're going to start with what's the crack. So, Leah, what is the crack?
Hello, Seb. Thank you very much for having me on. I am obviously my name's Leah. I'm 25. Was currently living in London, and I've moved to Marlborough. And at the moment, I feel my mental health it's very like up and down. So one minute I'll feel like I'm on top of the world, and then the next minute I kind of feel like I don't even want to leave the house, and I'm not really capable of anything. But I think obviously everyone has those days. Um, and one of the reasons I did move out of London is because I'm sure of many of you know that do live there. It can really take it out of you, and it had a massive impact on my anxiety levels and depression for sure.
Mm. And are you starting to feel slightly better now that you've moved out to Marlborough? I know, like you've only moved out recently, but have you seen an effect?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was just more, I needed a bit more peace of mind in terms of my surroundings and having it's quite a claustrophobic city to live in London. Like there's no chill, whether you're in your bedroom or not. You can always hear things, there's always stuff going on, there's violence. As much as it is amazing and a very good city to go and get experience, it is like you really need to know what you're getting yourself into. But yeah, I'm around the countryside, I go on my walks, kind of going back to my old roots with horse riding. I've got dogs with me, which is great. And yeah, I think hopefully this is going to help a lot in the long run.
Good stuff. No, I sympathise. I when I go down to London to visit like friends and stuff after like a couple of days. Obviously, I'm only there normally for a weekend at a time, but I'm always like knackered, even if I haven't actually done that much. Just the hustle and bustle of it, and like the difference between living in Madrid and London, where obviously Madrid's the capital city, but it's just there's so much more chill over here, and it feels like you can get off the main kind of streets within a couple of left or right turns, whereas in London it just feels regardless of where you are, there's always traffic, there's always human traffic, there's always people. It's just never. It literally is a city that never sleeps. So I completely understand what you were going through. Um, so yeah, so should we get on with the main segment because I feel like this kind of is a perfect little segue into anxiety and what you've been dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Perfect. So, Leah, I'm just going to start off really, really simple. Could you just explain anxiety to me? And the reason I'm asking something that kind of almost stupid is just because I've never really had it, and knowing you from school, uh, obviously you can never tell what's going on the inside, but it never seemed as if you did have anxiety. So I'm just interested in to seeing like how you felt and how or feel now currently, and what anxiety means for you and how it's seen.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I think, well, I know obviously anxiety is very different for a lot of people, and it comes in all types of forms, and it can come in waves, or you can have it for life, or you can not really know that you've got it. The list goes on. But in general, for me, it's something I think I did develop around my school days, but I wasn't overly aware of it. I just thought I might be quite a shy and anxious person. But obviously, Seb, you know me, I'm not like shy, but I think in terms of self-worth, I lacked quite a lot of it. It kind of,
Right.
it's almost like, so I people will see me as a very confident person and be able to talk to anyone, or like not really shy out of a situation. But inside my head, it's almost like I am overcompensating myself and my confidence to kind of cover up like a mask. So
Mm.
I think it's quite hard for me to talk about when I'm in school because I can't really remember my mindset. But I know over the past couple of years, especially when living in London, my anxiety has just been like, got to a point where I didn't want to leave the house. And it's not like I'm stood there being anxious. It's literally your brain kind of telling you like talking your way out of things because you're overthinking the outcome and you think it's going to be a lot more difficult than it is. Like, for example,
Right.
I'll start like a project and I'll be so into it and I'll be so enthusiastic, and then I'll sort of, this is not as bad as it has been in the past, but like I'll like talk myself out of it and just not really be asked because I'll think that if I go on to something else, I'll be happier. It's like my brain's constantly looking for little bursts of happiness rather than sticking it out and going through
Mm.
a difficult stage to get a better outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but I've had panic attacks and stuff as well. It's like you kind of just feel like you're never really gonna feel anything but what you're feeling, and it's like crying, hyperventilating. You don't really know why, but after you've done it, you feel so much better. But yeah, that's pretty much what anxiety feels like to me.
Right. And is so when you're talking about self work, some of the, some people who don't know you, this is just how I saw you, and I think how maybe most others saw you in school and maybe in like the Lincoln scene. Obviously, Lincoln's even though it's a city, it's basically a town. It's that small, so everyone kind of knows everyone. And you were always like, obviously, I mean, you're still a pretty good, you're still like a beautiful girl now, but you're obviously a good looking girl at school. You're always kind of, I hate to use the word, but that popular in the popular group, you always had like loads of friends, or at least that's how it seemed anyway. Did did your self confidence, was that ever a physical thing as well? Just because I know that, especially for girls, especially when you're at school and stuff, it can be a real factor for girls. Was that ever a problem, or were you like, I'm just trying to see if that maybe was what instigated it or something, or were you kind of confident within that?
Uh, so I've got quite a deep level of understanding to do with like anxiety and mental health and where it all comes from, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Mm,
Yeah, a lot of it did come from the whole physical aspect because you're constantly sort of comparing yourself. And I know we had social media back then as well, and it was just I started to sort of develop like an unhealthy mindset of comparison. And I know I was always quite slim. Like I've never been overweight. I've always been quite a fit and healthy person. But like I think you will just compare yourself to like another pretty girl or someone, or like a boy won't fancy you back, so then you think you're not good enough. So I think a lot of that, like anxiety, will all kind of stem from situations when you were younger, when your brain is developing and you're learning new things. So you'll like attach yourself to something from years ago and you won't realize that you're doing it. You're subconsciously kind of like putting up a barrier and be like, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not going to do that, or that situation is really going to hurt me, so I'm not going to do it. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, no, of course, yeah, yeah. And so then with the so that's obviously the physical side of it, which is, it's surprising for me to hear, obviously, because like I said, I mean, you were obviously, I mean, what does it say, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I mean, I thought so, and I think many of the other lads and girls at school always kind of saw you as one of the let's say better looking of the year, and I think most people would have been happy to call you their girlfriend. So it's kind of funny that it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how beautiful someone is perceived to be, like even that person can be struggling with, you know, with some sort of physical kind of crisis. Because you always think originally that it's like these ugly Betty types, whether it's a boy or a girl. It's the fat person, it's the person with receding hairline, it's the person with this that's thinking about their physical appearance. So you kind of just think that people who are stereotypically good looking don't ever kind of worry about it. So it's kind of interesting for me to hear that. Do you think as well? Like your school grades, did that ever have like an effect on how, like, your self-worth and stuff, and how you valued, just forgetting about the physical side of things, but your inside, your personality, your mental aspect, because obviously we're always comparing grades, comparing what university we got into, and I know you had some problems at university. So do you think that impacted it, or?
I mean, I knew my grades were all right. I probably could have done better, but like I got into uni, blah blah blah, and then I don't know. I think throughout the start of uni was quite a big thing for my mental health because I'd never really gotten to know myself properly outside of school. Like, you're always trapped in that school bubble, especially the school that I went to before cars, obviously. And I never really had that outside world experience. So I think when I went to uni, I kind of I don't really know what happened in my head. I can't remember, but I think I hit like a massive depression. And I think because around that time as well, I'd stopped riding horses because of my injury. I went through like a deep kind of depression where I didn't really know it. And I knew that I wasn't happy with my home life either. And I was just getting really attached to my boyfriend who was living in Scotland, and it just wasn't healthy. So I packed it all in, went home, and then started working. But I think because I had so much like, oh my God, I'm the only one that's dropped out, when I wasn't at the time. I didn't know this. I'm the only one that's dropped out. Like, I'm never going to amount to anything. Like, everyone's doing so well and I'm not. And I think that's when the real comparison and anxiety started to stem. So
Yeah,
yeah, definitely academically, not that I'm not capable of going to uni and getting grades. Like, I know that for a fact. But I think like back then, I did not realize what I was doing or why I was doing it.
mm,
My choices weren't as clear, and like now I'll make a decision that I want to do something in my life, and it'll kind of I'll have a meaning to it, whereas back then I'll just kind of like, I was just like following the system, just following sheep, and not really having my own, what's the word, not really having my own outlook, no, not really having my own perception of the way that I should be going. I was just listening to so many other people.
yeah. Yeah, it's easy to fall into that, like just that rat race and comparing yourself to everyone else. Like I remember there was a couple of people at Cards who didn't go to uni, but because they decided not to, and I always said that they were like the bravest people, because even though they had the grades to go to uni, they decided that an apprenticeship was better for them. And especially at our grammar school, is a grammar school, so you're kind of expected to go to university, weren't you? So
Hmm.
I always thought that it's just so when it's expected of you and you do anything other than that, you're always kind of slightly seen as a failure, even though that may not be the case. For example, one of our friends from Cars who did choose to do an apprenticeship, he's earning, I don't know, it's not all about earning, but he's earning way more and seems to be happy in his job compared to a lot of like a lot of us who have gone to university and now we're in a load of debt and maybe not all of the
Exactly.
happiest. And do you know what I mean? But at the time he was seen as a failure, and all the rest of us were seen as these really intelligent folks who were going to university. And sometimes I wonder who was a smarter one. But do you think as well, like you sent me some notes over before the podcast and I read some of them, and some of them were I kind of agreed with, and I saw, and I was going to bring them up. So it was good to see that you've noticed that those, not faults, but those things within you as well. And one of the things is that you would always kind of flip flop between something. So you, like you said at the very start of the recording, you would start something, and then after a month or two, you'd start something else, or you'd leave that. Or I remember you got like or you always managed to get amazing jobs. And then after like 6 months or so, I'd be like, "Oh, Leah, how are you doing in whatever it was, the BMW sales job or whatever?" And you'd be like, "Oh, I've left that now. I'm doing something else." What do you think that was down to?
Do you know what? I really, this conversation could get really deep, but I think a lot of it was to do with so one side of my life I had like my father telling me that I shouldn't go to uni and I should start my own business and I should do this and I should do that. And then my other side was my mum telling me, no, you need to go to uni, you need to get a degree, and then with whatever my friends are doing. And I think I'm not going to delve too much into my family life, but I think a lot of my upbringing
No,
had a
that's fine.
massive impact on the way that I've grown up and the way that I see things. I think I find myself a lot of the time confused and thinking, why can I never like stick at something, and something more like inconsistency.
Mm.
I can't remember what your question was now again. Sorry.
No, just that. Like, where do you think that inconsistency kind of came from? So, is it that you were stuck between a pillar and a rock and a hard place with your mum and dad? One's telling you to get into the real world, and the other one's telling you education is the way forward, and
I just think
or was it something else?
I think that my inconsistency just came from having the confidence and ambition to do something, but not actually, no, having the ambition to do something, but not actually having the confidence to take action. So I'd like dip my toes in and kind of think, oh, I'm not getting a quick fix. I'm not successful yet, so I'm going to move on. Like,
Right.
it could stem from so many different things, but I think it does boil down to the way that my perception was around that time, given my upbringing.
Mm. And would you say that that's better now? Have you like improved in that aspect, or are you still kind of struggling with those inconsistencies?
I do struggle with them I have done over the past year quite a lot, but I'm really trying to, especially now I've moved out of London, I have a bit more energy and a bit more focus. So I'm really trying to like get on top of my fitness and just keep reminding myself that little habits lead to big rewards. And I've
Yeah,
always only ever looked at the bigger picture of things and wondered why I've not got somewhere straight away. Whereas I'm slowly learning that we do need to build like an empire for ourselves. And yeah, I'm
yeah.
making sure that that happens for me, hopefully.
It's funny you say that actually because I was listening to a podcast yesterday and it was with a former Navy SEAL. So I always think, I mean, if you're going to learn from anyone, you might as well learn from the best. And the guy was saying that his kind of key to success is keeping your world small. And so he was saying that, for example, in Navy SEALs, they have this 1 week called Hell Week, where basically the recruitment who are trying to become Navy SEALs, basically they have like 2 hours sleep throughout the whole 5 days, and then they've got to do these like the worst imaginable tasks ever when they're completely drained physically and mentally. And then he said that what the way that he found the best way to get through that was just to see it as, look, every 6 hours they have to feed me. So if I can just get through the next 6 hours, then I'm that little bit closer. And then you add on 6 hours, 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 and before you know it, you've done the 5 days. Whereas he said, if you looked at it from the beginning and you go, oh my God, I've still got another 4 days of this, you would drop out because there's just no way your brain could even fathom how you would keep going when you looked at that picture, like that big picture. And I thought that's actually really, obviously it makes sense, but it's a really kind of just an interesting and simple way to look at things, of just keep your world small. So just keep it all small, just look at the next step. And it's that whole thing of, what is it? The cliches, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. But I mean, they're cliches, but they're true. And I think I think we can all kind of sympathize with you with that, where you get into something and you look at the big picture, you look at the final goal, and you go, that is just so far off. There's no way I'm going to be able to achieve that. But then if you do it just one step at a time, it can be so much more manageable. I mean, I remember when I did the half marathon without training because I'm an idiot and I'm lazy. And people said, "Oh, you're going to quit. You're going to quit." And I was like, "I won't, because all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other until I finish those 13 miles." Whereas if I thought of it as like at the start line, Seb, you've got 13 miles to do, I probably would have quit because it just would have seemed impossible, you know. So I think like that lesson that you've learned about just taking it one step at a time, small picture stuff, which eventually leads to the big picture, is like invaluable. And obviously, if it helps you with your anxiety, then even better, I guess. Um, how has it been? You're talking about like your self worth and stuff, and maybe not necessarily kind of having a direction and not knowing whether education was the way forward or whether it was the real world and getting job experience and stuff. How has that been for you in terms of knowing, like, not whether you have a goal now or not, but not having a goal and not having that sense of direction? Has that been a massive kind of cause of your anxiety?
Yeah, definitely. But to be honest, I don't really think that I've seen it like that over the years. I've not thought it's my anxiety that's the problem. It's like I am my own
Right.
worst enemy, and I have learned that everything is my fault, as in everything that comes into your life is your responsibility, whether that you be getting sacked or you not getting into uni or you not going to run today or someone actually crashing into your car. Yeah, it's not really your fault, but it's your responsibility to deal with the aftermath of it, whether it's fair or not.
Mm,
um, but I think, yeah, lack of direction. I kept thinking that I had a direction, and then I'd kind of it's like my brain got bored, or I'd just like, I don't know. It's really hard to explain. It's almost like my brain was quite foggy.
right.
But now I've tried to kind of implement the like smaller steps to where I actually want to go, and just like it's almost like I'm too impatient to
Mm,
kind of like, I'm trying to learn patience to get to where I want to be. So yeah, it has calmed my head down a lot, and just knowing that I do need to be consistent, otherwise I'm not gonna get where I want to be. Um, but yeah, I think hopefully my head stays on a level plane, but I know obviously everyone's going to be worrying at the minute about the virus, and any future plans aren't really going to be in a massive thought process right now for everyone, but I feel like it's important to know that this is not going to last forever. We are going to see each other again. Money will return, the government will help, and there is always a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. Obviously, guys, we're recording this during the coronavirus breakdown. I've been in lockdown now for 13 days, and I'm going stir crazy. I've shaved my head like Britney Spears. So yeah, I'm maybe not dealing with it the best. But I did want to ask whether, obviously these are unprecedented times, and no one could have ever imagined that this would ever happen. And I think even maybe the most Zen masters may be struggling somewhat in these times. So I was wondering, how is it with some? You've struggled with anxiety quite openly, and during, let's just say in inverted commas, normal times. How has it been for you now, where people are panicking constantly? You see them buying all the toilet roll, buying all the food. It looks like it's the end of the world. It feels like we're in some sort of film. Has have you seem like you've kind of actually got a good hold on things? You seem a lot more calm than some people I've been speaking to. But how has that been for you? Has it knocked you back? Has it brought up that anxiety again, or have you kind of been able to ride that wave a little bit?
Do you know what? And I think you probably might disagree with me on what I'm about to say. I'm not too sure, but this is wholeheartedly my belief.
Yeah, that's fine.
I genuinely, I have barely any anxiety about this. I'm like, and it's not because I don't care. I care a lot, and I care for the safety of my friends and family, obviously. And I really, really
Yeah.
respect what the NHS are doing. Like, hats off to them. They are incredible. Um, but I think it's really hard to put into words. I think that this world like needed this detachment from humans, from the human race. Like, it needs to breathe. And I think I'm not going to get all spiritual on this, but it's like the earth needs a cleanse, and I don't think that we would have carried on for as long as we're going to as humans if we didn't have this happen. And it's kind of like a realization that there are so many things happening, and it's like, what when something like this happens, what matters? What is all that matters? Your family, your friends, your health, your support workers. That is it. Nothing else
Yeah.
matters. Not the big investment banks, not the big bankers, not blah blah blah. You know what I mean?
Mm.
We as humans are really getting to touch base with what matters, who we are, and having time to actually sit and think rather than being wrapped up in such a commercial world. But
Mm.
I know it's obviously not good for the economic industry, and I completely respect that. But I just think that as human beings, money will always return and things will get better. And I know I'm speaking from someone that sat in a house that with my best friends, and I'm not fully on lockdown yet. But what I mean is, in the bigger picture to that, I think that it is, you can take a lot of good from this as well.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I think look, we all know it's a shit situation, and unfortunately, there's already been a lot of casualties, and it's just a fact that there will be more. And so that's obviously devastating news. But I genuinely believe this. I always think there's a silver lining to any situation. There is a positive. There is or maybe not a positive, but a lesson. Even from the worst of situations, right? And I think maybe sometimes it's harder to find those lessons. When something terrible has happened. But so you talk about pandemic and you go, oh, well, what's the positive in that? But you've outlined it perfectly. And I think, when there is nothing else that could ever stop the world globally the way it has done. And I think it's made people, like you said, really kind of reevaluate what they think is important, re reestablish some relationships, because at the end of the day, that is all that we have as humans. We are hunter gatherers. We are supposed to be in communities, and being in lockdown, being mandated by the government that you can't go and spend Mother's Day with your mother, and that you can't do this, you can't do that, being told that you have to stay inside. Some people who maybe live alone, they're going to have to be inside for a certain amount of time alone. I mean, that's what we do to prisoners. That's how we punish the worst people in our society, is by putting them in a cell alone. And so I think that there are lessons. Just my personal situation, I found that My mum and dad, obviously, like I said before on this podcast, they've gone through a divorce, and it's for the first time kind of since that divorce has happened, they're back on speaking terms and they're looking out for each other. And my dad's got a restaurant, so my mum is trying to help him find all of the different government help schemes that are helping small businesses and stuff. And my dad is doing the opposite, because my mum's a self-employed lawyer. So all of a sudden you had these two estranged people who are now looking out for each other. And isn't it weird that a pandemic is what's caused that? But I think it's because when push comes to shove and shit hits the fan, you realize, look, okay, whether it's my parents' situation, you got divorced, or it's a friend that you had an argument with, in reality, is it really that important when you're faced with life and death consequences? And so I think you're completely right, and it is. It's a time that we've been given, maybe by Mother Nature, that we should try to make the most of. Look, we're all going to be stuck in the house, so you might as well do something with that time you've been given. And if that means that you can readdress some long lost friendships, or maybe just right some wrongs, or maybe just apologize to someone who you've wronged a year or two ago, and you never really got round to it because you're busy and you're in the rat race, and who cares, and blah blah blah. Well, this is just a time just to calm down, just to realize what's important. And look, the economic devastation is definitely gonna be a fallout of this. But like you said, the most important thing is the relationships that we have. And so if this can put those relationships into perspective, then maybe there's something that we can take from this horrible situation. I
Hmm.
mean, just looking at us, we've spoken more in this time than we
Yeah.
probably have in the last year or two. And I mean, obviously, we were trying to get organised for the podcast, and I was supposed to come out to London to see you for it, and so it's a bummer that that's been cancelled. But
Mm.
even still, the fact that we're having this conversation and whatever else is maybe slightly in part due to coronavirus. So there are definitely positives from that. I wanted to ask as well. Has you when you were at school, and then when you kind of went into university,
Hmm.
you were, I don't want to say that you were one of those girls who always had a boyfriend, but I
Mm.
mean, like we've mentioned before, you're good looking, you're popular, so it wasn't exactly hard for you to find them. But you did kind of have them fairly regularly, and then you kind of went through a bit of a period where you like kind of stopped, and I noticed that like, oh, like Leah's been single for a good while now, which was unusual to me. um, do you think that kind of, you've mentioned before how you were kind of dependent on your boyfriend in Scotland,
Mm.
do you think that had a negative impact because you were kind of so invested in a relationship in someone else, and you kind of didn't afford yourself the time to work on yourself before you got into a relationship? Was that maybe potentially the reason why some of these broke down?
Yeah, no, I think so for sure. A lot. To be fair, I think throughout the two relationships that I did had, one was a year. I think the other one was a year and a half.
Yeah,
I didn't really allow myself to focus on what I wanted, or it was just more about that person when I'm next seeing them. What are our plans together? Blah blah blah. And I kind of let everything else slide a little bit. I don't really know why, but I think when I did break up with them, I kind of found a completely new self and started becoming a lot more confident and working on myself a lot more. Yeah, I did have anxiety, but I think I matured a lot throughout those years that I was single, for
mm,
sure. But yeah, every person that comes into your life is a lesson. I fully believe that, and you can always take something from a situation, whether you get your heart broken or you break someone else's heart. You're just growing as a person each time. So
yeah.
yeah, I think everyone goes through different experiences of relationship, whether you're together for 25 years, 1 year, everyone will take something from it for sure.
Yeah, and then you mentioned social media, and obviously, like we had it at our school times, but it's ramped up now. I mean, I work in the bloody sector, so I mean, I should
Mm.
know, but it's more prevalent. It's worse. It's better. I suppose it depends on how you look at whether you're a half full or half empty kind of person. But how do you kind of deal with that now? Because I think, even back in our, like when we were at school, I mean, obviously we had social media, but I don't think it was, there's that look now, isn't there, where all girls have that same that same look. It's the lips done up, it's the fake eyelashes, it's the tan. There's that social media look, so to say, which I don't think really existed back when we were at like sixth form or even maybe the start
No.
of uni. How do you do you use it less? Do you monitor how much you're using social media, or do you kind of realize that it does sometimes overwhelm you and overtake you?
I think with something like that, it takes you to completely go cold turkey with it to realize how much it's affecting your way of thinking.
Mm.
When you get something taken away from you, you're forced to think differently and not think about that thing. So you'll kind of realize, oh my God, there was so much I was comparing myself to or relying on. Yeah, no, I still 100% do compare myself to other girls. Absolutely. Like, it's really hard not to, but I think taking breaks from it, I took like a month break and I just found myself not thinking about what anyone else was doing. And yeah, I feel like I'd want to completely get rid of Instagram, but it's a really good way to stay in touch with people, which is the annoying thing. But yeah, I think it's a massive addiction and it can have a massive effect on your mental health in terms of your self-worth and comparing, oh, that person's in the Maldives right now and I'm not, and they're obviously doing better than me. Like, no, it's just a video, it's a photo, it's, you shouldn't compare, and that's obviously very easy for someone to say that, but
No,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
it's not healthy. But you need to remove yourself from a situation or from a visual perspective of something to come out of it and just realize how stupid, not stupid, how like brainwashed you were, and in thinking that that's the way that you should be thinking, or you think, you know what I mean.
No, 100%. And obviously, just throughout this conversation, I think the key word other than anxiety has been compare and comparison.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is just social media in a nutshell, isn't it? Really, like when you think about it, whether it's you're comparing yourself to another person in terms of looks or whatever it may be, or you're comparing, let's say, maybe even your relationship, if you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then you look at someone else and you're like, oh my God, they're always going away on weekends to Paris, to
Mm.
Milan, to this, to that. And we always just sit at home and or look at this person, they've just got an Audi and I'm still using, for me in Madrid, for example, I'm using the metro for public transport, €20 a month. So there's just an endless list of comparisons that you can make if you use social media in that way.
Yeah.
And I do think it can get, I hate to use the word toxic because I just think it's been so overused in the last couple of years. Everything seems toxic these days, but I do think it can get toxic because it's like a little demon that works its way into your brain and then your soul, and then it kind of just overtakes you, and it overrides the system. And before you know it, like you said, you used Instagram to keep in touch with people, to keep tabs on people. Just see like what your friends are up to. That's what it was all made for. That's why it was invented. And now you're using it for the complete opposite reasons. Now you're using it to actually denigrate yourself, to talk bad, to think badly about yourself. You don't realize it, but that's what you're doing. And obviously, if you suffer from anxiety, and like you said, comparison is kind of the true evil of anxiety, then I can't. Social media for me must be like hell, because obviously as well, it's what I always think is that everyone only ever shows their best side on social media.
Yeah.
No one is ever gonna, if they've had an argument with their boyfriend, they're not gonna put that on social media, nor should they, by the way, because no one wants to see that. But what they will do is, if they've gone away to the weekend to Paris, for example, then they'll put 30 photos up, and some of
Mm.
them, some people even save the photos, don't they? And then they'll post of a Paris photo 6 months after they went on holiday. So if you're not savvy, you'll think, oh my God, that person's in Paris again. You don't
Mm.
realize that was taken in the same 3-day period. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
It's an odd one. How have you, like, now that you kind of, so obviously you've gone on that those social media hiatuses and realized how kind of dangerous they can be for your own mental health. What
Mhm.
is there anything else that you realized you were doing, whether it was, I don't know, going out with a certain set of friends. I'm not expecting you to name them, but or I don't know, maybe you were drinking too much, maybe you were doing drugs socially. That was the next day the come down, or was there anything that you were doing that you realized, kind of like the social media? Oh shit, like this is not. I think it's a good thing, and I think it's fun, and I think it's cool, but in reality, this or this person or whatever it may be, the situation is isn't helping me. If anything, it's doing the opposite. It's actually worsening my anxiety. Was there anything else that you kind of realized?
Yeah, I think my social life was just like constant, especially when I was at uni and when I left. Like I had a group of friends, which a lot of them I still am friends with, and absolutely no hard feelings to them because they're all great. It's just they at that age, because we were all younger, we'd go out a lot, go to raves, do things we shouldn't do, and then just keep doing it, keep doing it, and keep doing it. Not to like a everyday kind of thing, but it'd be like every weekend or every other weekend, and it'd be so fun, and we'd all love each other, and it'd be great, and you just see that that's such a cool thing to do, and you think that's like that's what you need to do to be cool. And then I
Mm,
kind of, to be fair, kind of that all kind of ended when, well, I want to say when I moved to London, I wasn't really going out as much at all. I kind of had to grow up a lot. I got like a slap in the face, like, okay, Leah, you're on your own now. You can't go do the things you've got to do. You're paying a lot of money for rent. Like you need to be responsible. And I think over those 2 years that I was there, something good did come out of that, and it did make it woke me up a lot. And you know
mm.
what? Everyone goes out, everyone parties, everyone makes mistakes, but I think you don't really realize what the important things are in life at that age when you're wrapped up in that kind of crowd. But I'd say that my what's the word? My priorities are a lot more in place now, and that's just part of growing up, I guess. And some people are still out partying, going crazy every weekend at the age of 30. So I think it just depends how quickly you can snap out of it and where your morals are, I guess.
100%. That's what I was going to say. Like me, like I'll on a good night out when it's when the time's right, I'll party as much as the next man. But I'm just not about that party life one all the
No,
time. It's draining, and like I just
yeah.
like it steals the happiness from tomorrow, And I'm just like, oh, I'd much rather have like a leveled out life rather than like these amazing highs and then like the next day just the worst low you can imagine.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
lows and highs. It's like one minute you're having such a good time, and then the next day you're feeling like worse than you've ever felt before. And it's like you can't be chasing those highs all the time because it's only going to lead to long term sadness, if you know what I mean. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. Yeah, yeah, and as well, you have to realize that, like, as much as obviously alcohol and all that stuff, and even maybe, I don't know if that what the term is social drugs, but the drugs that you might take at parties that aren't exactly the
Mm.
hardest. It's not heroin we're talking about, MDMA, LSD, whatever it may be, weed. But some of these drugs are, and alcohol, they are like depressants. They're not good for you. So when you're doing them every single weekend, or some people maybe even within the week, and then you're trying to also then live a normal life in the sense of maintaining your job, paying for your rent, whatever it may be, and you burn the wick at both ends. Eventually, you're going to burn out. There's just no way that you can keep that lifestyle up. Do you know what I mean? And then that's when you kind of come crashing down like an almighty force. And I think it's just better maybe if you can to maybe not ever arrive at that point. But if you do arrive at that point, then just, like you said, take lessons out of it. There's always something that we can learn from whatever it is that you're going through. You've seen, so obviously that's kind of you've as moving out to Marlborough and all the rest of it. It's not exactly like you're going to be going to raves every day. You're probably more likely to be going to farmers markets. But um, but is there? I've seen that you've been kind of into like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and on your Instagram and stuff. And has that? Do you want to kind of speak a bit to that and like your interest in it and how that kind of came about and what really you're doing?
So I got interested in that because I had a CBT therapy session with this woman, and it was kind of like I didn't really look into the difference between therapy and counselling, but counselling is more talk therapy, and therapy is like kind of the aim to reprogram your ways of thinking and behavioral patterns. So that just really intrigued me because I wasn't too sure, and I'm not too sure about the way that I think about things and the way that I look about things and why. But it all just stems down to your upbringing, on how not necessarily upbringing as in like everything that you kind of go through at a younger age, especially before the age of like 10.
Yeah, your
Um,
life experiences.
yeah, so like the way that you're told that things are right and wrong, and your perception of money, your perception of relationships, and the way that you should be living your life, whether you get married or not, or your morals, blah, blah, blah. But all of that affects your mental health, and you develop a bias feeling which affects your perception of your life situations going forward. And to kind of reprogram your brain, you need to revisit the traumas, not necessarily traumas, but situations in your life that have made you have that perception now. It's quite hard to revisit that sometimes, or sometimes you won't know what to revisit. But it's all about CBT therapy is all about trying to get things out of you in small doses that eventually
Mm.
lead to the answer of why you do think like that, or why suddenly something will trigger you to be feeling depressed or cry or whatever. You can break those barriers, and it is totally doable. I just don't think a lot of people believe that to be true.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I've never done it, so I am talking from a place of absolute ignorance here. But I think from what I've heard, because everyone who's done therapy, whatever therapy they've done, whether it's drama therapy, CBT, or art therapy, or whatever it may be, everyone always recommends it. But I think what's so important is kind of the thing that everyone has in common is you need that expert to kind of lead your hand down that path,
Hmm.
and that it's almost impossible to go down that path by yourself. You know, that's why these people train for years on end and rack up a huge student debt, is because you have to be a real expert in it. And from
Yeah.
what I hear, it sounds impossible to do that without the right, and also it's about getting the right therapist. Now I know a couple of my friends who maybe they might have done CBT, but it's just the person that they were doing it with, it didn't really fit right, and then they would jump
Mm.
from one person to the other, and then eventually they found that man or woman who would help, who they just felt comfortable with, and then before they knew it, they were off and running. Was that
Yeah.
similar to you, or did you kind of strike it off from the get go?
Sorry, the line cracked up a little bit then. Can you just repeat that last bit?
Yeah, was it similar? Like I was saying that some of my friends, they would jump between one therapist to another before they kind of felt comfortable. Was that similar with you, or did you kind of strike it off from the very get go with the first therapist that you came in contact with?
Uh, yeah, a lot of them are very different. I've had one that's been really good, but obviously I moved down south and she was up north. But then I had one down here recently, and I wasn't like dissing his way of doing CBT. Everyone's different, but he made me feel very uncomfortable, and kind of he'd say things like, "Oh well, if you just thought in this way, if you stop thinking the way that you do, then you'll be happy." And I was kind of like, "What?
Great, cheers.
What? This is coming from like an actual psychologist here. Like what planet are you on?" And he just like he kind of like he'd be like, "Okay, so why do you think like that?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. You're meant to be here to help me." I don't know. I think he just. I'm really not sure, but that session didn't last very long. But yeah, it does matter what therapist you have and specific knowledge, because a lot of them work on trauma, or they'll be specific to people with like OCD, or specific to anxiety or getting out of depression. So definitely do your research, and definitely test water with them, because yeah, sometimes it can be like not beneficial at all.
Yeah, and also at the end of the day, I mean, you are the client, and I mean, it's not cheap, is it? So, don't
No.
if you don't feel comfortable with that person, better to get out before you'll end up wasting,
Mm,
hundreds, if not thousands of pounds with that same person that you could have better spent with someone else, and that time as well, not just the money, but the amount of time going to see them and whatever else. I think we're kind of segueing perfectly into the how do you keep your shit together. We kind of touched on it a bit anyway, but you said that you had a kind of out there way to keep on top of your shit mentally. So I'm just going to play the jingle because just frankly because I love the jingle,
just for the
and
clip.
then after that you can tell me all about how you keep your shit together. that's it. I mean, just bangs. But yeah, so do you wanna go ahead and tell us what it is that you do that helps you keep your shit together? Maybe people can learn and adopt your techniques.
Yeah, for sure. So one of my close friends actually really helped me with this. He's a professional sports player, and he really helped me because he's been through depression before due to an injury. And I was kind of asking him, because I know he's a very smart guy. I was asking like, how did you get out of this, and what did you do? And he just said to me, I life hacked my way out of it. And then he started to explain to me that he started forming little habits. So when you're kind of lacking a sense of control and lacking sense of direction and focus, and it all stems from little habits that you do. So he'd tell me, okay, for the next 3 days, I want you to wake up and I want you to drink a pint of water straight away. And I want you to do that for 3 days. And then I want you to do the next 3 days. I want you to drink a pint of water every day. And then I want you to get up and go for a 45-minute walk before you get home and go for a shower. And he'd say, keep building these little habits, like step by step, day by day, and eventually your brain will get used to these and see it as a habit that you can't really stop doing, or you'll feel agitated if you don't do it. Form healthy habits and your life will get better, and you'll see that 100%. And he was totally right. Another thing that I do, which he was also telling me about, and I have read up on this too, practice being grateful for what you've got, even though you might not feel it. Just especially now there's a coronavirus going on and people don't really have, that they need to be as grateful as they possibly can for what they've got. Practice being grateful for what you've got 3 things per day. So write it down either in the morning or in the evening and say, for example, okay, today I'm grateful for that I've woken up. Or at the end of the day, you could say, I'm really grateful today that the delivery man delivered my post on time. Like little things, big things, whatever you want, just write them down, put them in your memory book, and it creates like a burst of serotonin in your brain that makes you feel good. So it might not feel like a big thing that you're doing, but in your brain it is. And you're programming your brain to think positively and think of the better outcomes of situation. Another thing that I do is, I know obviously a lot of people do meditate, and it is very hard to get into, and it takes a lot of practice, and it is difficult, and it is hard to quiet your mind. But if you start doing your meditation, like download an app, I use Headspace myself, and you need to specifically meditate about something, about one thing, whether that's you need to meditate around the fact, or around, like say if you've had a really busy day, just make it your intention in that meditation to feel calmer. I want to feel calmer, so you practice meditation around that. Or say if you wanted to get a specific job, or you needed to, I don't know, you want to meditate about making your mum feel good, you kind of specifically meditate around those good feelings and stick them to that specific thing that you want to happen in your life, or that you're worried about. Like make sure that you like almost put a stamp on things, put like a positive stamp on what you want the outcome to be of a situation.
Hmm.
It's a lot harder than it sounds, but it kind of, it just keeps your mood up about certain things, and it doesn't let you mind. It's important to step away from your life and literally just think about being in the present.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I like use calm. Like
yeah,
I go into like periods where I'll be really good with it and I'm really on top of it and I'll do it every day before I go to sleep or whatever it may be, and then I'll go through like a month or two around just. I always say I haven't got the time, which is nonsense because it's 10 minutes, or it can even be less. It can be 5 minutes if you want it to be. But yeah,
yeah,
it's hard to keep on top of. But I can see the benefits when I do it, so it kind of makes it even more stupid that I'm not doing it every day. But I would 100% agree with what you've just said there.
yeah,
100%.
for
Perfect.
sure.
Well, if we actually just before we end, you are going to Morocco in
Yes,
September,
I am.
coronavirus permitting.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you want to kind of just tell people about that? I'll put the GoFundMe link in the link of this podcast, and we'll share it on our social medias as well.
Thank
But do you
you.
want to just tell people about that? What you're doing it, why you're doing it for, and how people can help?
Sure thing. So me and my friend Ellie are doing a mountain trek in Morocco on the 9th to 13th of September for the Mental Health Foundation. Obviously, there's a big reason why I'm doing it, and a lot of that I have just told you. And I actually have a family member who suffers quite badly. I don't see him anymore, but it's one of those things. I don't really have the resources to help him. Um, but that's another story for another time. But Ellie's father actually passed away back in September 2019, and we both just really want to do something to make a difference and just to challenge ourselves and break our own barriers. So any donations would be overly appreciated, and we hopefully will be able to complete it.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that would be an absolute bummer if that got cancelled. But look, well, that's, I mean, what, 4 months, 5 months away. So we're
Mm.
hoping that by then this should
Oh
have all
God.
passed over. You've done amazing, haven't you? You've already got
Yeah.
£1,000 or something from donations, which is,
Done pretty well. We want to
yeah,
hopefully get around 4,000. Because Ellie also wants to donate to British Heart Foundation because her dad died of a heart attack. So yeah, we're going to try and get as much as we can, and hopefully this coronavirus leaves us and we can get travelling to where we want to travel to.
perfect. Well, if you want to help Leah and Ellie climb up the Atlas Mountains in Morocco for the Mental Health Foundation, go to their GoFundMe page, which you can see in the description of this podcast below or in any of our social media. We'll put it there as well. Be generous, guys. Help out and offer as much money as you can. And it was all going to a good cause. And if you just want to do it out of just spite because you want to see Leah sweating up a mountain in Morocco, then that's a good enough reason as well. I mean, that's probably why I'll donate.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people would love to pay to see me walking up a mountain for 3 days and sleeping in a
Yeah,
tent.
exactly. That's why I'm donating. Enough of this country life and horses, but I want to see you rough it. So look, thank you, thank you so much for coming on, Leah. Good to speak to you. Unfortunately, we didn't do this in person as was planned, but we will definitely see each other soon. And it's been really insightful to listen to your story, and hopefully, people have learned from it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Seb. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.